welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Stephanie and I appreciate y'all stopping by. Today I'll be showing y'all how I made these 6 easy farmhouse or ranch house style decor pieces. I do want to go ahead and apologize about my voice. I've been a bit under the weather for the last couple of days, but I really wanted to go ahead and get this video out for y'all. I hope y'all enjoy the video, and if you do, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Also, stay tuned for a special giveaway that I'll be telling y'all more about here in a few minutes. Let's go ahead and jump into the first DIY. For this first project, I used one of these 14.2 inch by 14.2 inch plywood circles that comes in a 3-pack that I picked up on sale at Hobby Lobby. I started by using Minwax wood stain in the color dark walnut to stain the entire circle, front, back, and sides, and allowed it to completely dry for a couple of hours. Next, I used my Cricut to cut out this adorable Highland cow decal that I found on Cricut Design Space, along with the words "Hey Y'all" in some permanent vinyl, and placed it in the center of the circle. It doesn't matter what color vinyl is used, since it will be removed and is just being used as a stencil. The most important thing is that the vinyl is fully adhered to the wood circle with no bumps and all the edges nice and smooth. I made sure to go back and rub the vinyl again to make sure it was nice and secure once I had it applied to the circle and the transfer tape removed. Once the vinyl was securely on the circle, I used Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster and a small paint roller from Dollar Tree to paint 2 thin coats of the paint over the entire circle, front, back, and sides, letting it dry completely between coats. After the paint was completely dry, I used my weeding tool to carefully remove all the vinyl pieces from the circle. This did take a little bit of time because I wanted to make sure that when I was peeling up the vinyl that I wasn't pulling up any of the paint, so I just took my time and worked in small sections. Here is how the circle looked once the vinyl was removed. Next, I took a finger sander with some coarse grit sandpaper and distressed the area around the cow and the words to give it a worn and weathered look, and so that some of the beautiful stained wood would be visible through the paint. While I was sanding, I made sure to wipe the dust away from the design so that the dark outline would not get chalky. Here's what it looked like once I had it distressed. I took some sisal rope that I had picked up at Harbor Freight and used hot glue to adhere it around the outside edge of the circle. If you don't have a Harbor Freight, you should be able to find sisal rope at a local home improvement store, or you could use the nautical rope from Dollar Tree. Once I had the rope wrapped around the circle, I took some scissors and cut the end of the rope at a slight angle and used hot glue to secure it to the circle, then blended the 2 ends together so that it was not a noticeable seam. I used another piece of the sisal rope and flipped the sign over and used a stapler to attach the rope to the top of the back side of the sign to create a hanger. Then, to finish off this sign, I made a double bow out of some wide burlap and a piece of thick jute and hot glued it to the top of the circle right underneath the hanger. After I had the bow hot glued into place, I took 2 pieces off of some lamb's ear and used hot glue to attach them to the wood circle underneath the bow on each side. Then I trimmed up the tails on the jute bow, and this one is finished. I am super happy with the way this door hanger turned out. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. As a thank you and to show my appreciation to all my wonderful subscribers and supporters, I'm going to be giving away one of these door hangers, so be sure to stay tuned to later on in the video to find out how to enter. Moving on to DIY number 2. For this second project, I used one of these 12 by 12 wood panels from the plus section at Dollar Tree. I started by using Minwax stain in dark walnut to stain the entire wood panel, front, back, and sides, and allowed it to dry for about an hour. Once the stain was dry, I took some Waverly chalk paint in the color ink and a small paintbrush and touched up all the areas around the inside of the panel where the stain did not adhere to the wood due to the glue residue from where it was put together. Next, I used some of this white and brown cow print suede fabric that I picked up on sale at Hobby Lobby, as well as a cow head silhouette that I cut out of some cardstock. I flipped the fabric upside down and placed the cow head template in the center and used a pencil to trace around the template and cut it out using a pair of good sharp scissors. Now I did cut this silhouette out of cardstock using my Cricut, but you could very easily trace the silhouette off the computer or even print it out on some cardstock and cut it out and have a template to trace. Here is how the fabric cow looked once I had it cut out. After the stain on the wood panel was completely dry, I placed the fabric cow in the center of the panel and used hot glue to secure it in place, paying close attention to make sure the edges were nice and secure. Next, I used 16 of these 3/4 inch black cut tacks that I picked up at Walmart. I used 2 paint cans to hold the panel up off of the table so that I could hammer the tacks into the panel without them also going through the table. After making sure the area I was placing the tack was off of the paint cans, I took a small hammer and hammered the tack all the way through the panel. Once I had the tack through the panel, I flipped it over and used a pair of wire cutters to cut off the excess tack flush with the back side of the panel. Then, to make sure the tack was flush and that there were no sharp edges, I took a Dremel tool with a grinding wheel attachment and used it to grind down any of the tack that was still sticking up. I then repeated these steps to add the other 15 tacks. I put the tacks on the high points around the outline of the cow head, such as the points on the ears, tips of the horns, and around the face. Since I was working on top of 2 cans of paint, I made sure to double check each time before hammering in the tacks that the part I was working on was hanging off the cans to keep them from puncturing. Now, if you don't want to add the tacks this way, you could also use the wire cutters to cut off the tips of the tacks and use hot glue or super glue to adhere them to the points on the cow's head. This is how it looked once I had all 16 tacks in place. I did go back once I had all the tacks in place and the backs cut off and touched up the areas on the back with more stain where the grinding wheel had exposed the raw wood. Then, to finish this one up, I took 12 of these bronze furniture nails that I picked up at Lowe's and placed 3 on each side of the frame, roughly 3 inches apart, and that's it for this one. I think this one turned out amazing, and it's one of my favorites out of today's projects. On to DIY number 3. For this third project, I used one of these large plastic clear cases I picked up on sale for $1.25 at Hobby Lobby. I started by removing all of the stickers and using a sanding sponge to lightly scuff up the surface. I then took it outside and used Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch spray paint in the color Gloss White and gave it 2 light coats as a primer. Once the spray paint was dry, I used Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster and gave the outside of the case as well as the outside of the lid 2 good coats, letting it dry completely between coats. After the paint on the lid was completely dry, I used some Minwax dark walnut stain and a foam brush and put a light coat over the top of the paint. I also used the stain to stain 2 of the tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree and 4 of the 1-inch ball knobs from Hobby Lobby. Here is how the lid, tumbling tower blocks, and ball knobs turned out. After everything was completely dry, I flipped the case upside down and used E6000 to adhere the 4 ball knobs onto the bottom of the case, placing 1 in each of the 4 corners, and set it aside to dry for a couple of hours. Then I used the E6000 to adhere the 2 tumbling tower blocks together, and then used more E6000 to adhere the blocks to the center of the lid and set it aside to dry for a couple of hours. Next, I used this pure thick cream stamp from the IOD crockery set. Since this was the first time I used this stamp, I took a piece of light grit sandpaper and scuffed up the stamp to get it ready to use. I placed the case on its side and loaded up the stamp with IOD erasable liquid chalk in the color charcoal and placed it in the center of the case and pressed down firmly all around the stamp to transfer the image. Since I wanted this piece to look old and worn, I took a baby wipe and wiped off some of the ink so that it was a lot lighter and the parts that didn't fully stamp weren't as obvious. I followed up with a dry paper towel to make sure it was nice and dry. I then replaced the lid and this one is finished. I love how this one turned out. I wasn't sure how the stain would work over the paint, but I think that it gave the lid a nice wood grain look. Today's video is in collaboration with my good friend Amanda over at 6 Kids and a Glue Gun. We both came up with some fun farmhouse inspired decor DIYs for y'all today, so when you're finished with my video, please head over to the link in the description box below to watch Amanda's video and be sure to tell her I sent you. She creates some of the most adorable DIYs and she has tons of videos full of all kinds of inspiration for all the holidays and even everyday decor. If you're visiting today from Amanda's channel, I want to say welcome and I really do hope you enjoy the video. And if you like what you see here today, click that subscribe button and stick around. I have lots of fun projects on the way. Also, I mentioned earlier that I was going to be giving away one of these adorable Highland Cow door hangers as a way of saying thank you and to give back to my subscribers. I wouldn't be able to do what I love here on YouTube if it wasn't for each and every one of y'all and all of the love and support. So as my way of saying thanks, I'm giving one lucky winner one of these door hangers made by yours truly. This giveaway is only for my U.S. viewers at this time, but hopefully in the near future I can offer an international giveaway. The giveaway starts today and ends February 10th, 2023 at 11:59 p.m. I will choose the winner using a random generator on February 11th, 2023, and I will respond to the winning comment, and the winner will have 48 hours to email me at my email address listed in the description box. To enter, all you have to do is either leave the word cow or a cow emoji in the comments below. Good luck. With all those details out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to DIY number 4. For this fourth DIY, I used a can from some beans and some giant craft sticks I picked up at Walmart. I started by cutting the ends off of one of the craft sticks and placing it up against the can and marked where I needed to cut it so that it would be the same height as the can and cut it to size. Once I had one of the craft sticks cut to size, I used that as a guide to cut the other craft sticks. After I had enough sticks cut to go all the way around the can, I used a generous amount of Gorilla Hot Glue on the ends of the sticks to attach them to the can. If you're careful, you can add a little bit of pressure to these craft sticks while holding them against the can with the hot glue still hot, and they will kind of curve around the can so that when the can is completely covered with the sticks, it's still fairly round. I continued to glue the craft sticks around the can, placing them as close together as I could until I had the entire can covered with the craft sticks. Here is how the can looked once it's completely covered. Next, I used 2 of these 7-inch by 7-inch wood circles that I picked up at Walmart. I used a generous amount of hot glue to attach the bottom of the can to the center of one of the circles. Then I used hot glue to attach the other circle to the top of the can, getting it as close to centered as possible. Once I had the 2 circles attached to the can, I went back in with more hot glue and filled in any of the large gaps between the craft sticks and between the can and the wood circles and smoothed it out as much as possible using a utility knife to remove any excess glue. Next, I used the Minwax Dark Walnut Stain to stain the entire spool, top and bottom. Then to finish this one, I took some Waverly chalk paint in the color ink and painted over all the areas where the wood stain didn't stain the hot glue. And that's it for this quick and easy wooden spool. I think this turned out super cute and I'll be using it as a candle holder. Moving right along to DIY number 5. For this 5th DIY, I used one of these round wood shaped trays from the plus section at Dollar Tree. I started by using the Minwax Dark Walnut Stain to stain the outside and bottom of the tray. After the stain was dry, I used Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster and painted just the rim of the tray. Next, I cut a strip of the white and brown cow print suede fabric from Hobby Lobby long enough and wide enough to go around the inside edge of the tray. I used hot glue to attach it all the way around the inside edge, paying extra close attention to the top and bottom edges and that they were fully adhered to the tray. Once the fabric was attached to the tray, I took a pair of small detail scissors and cut off the excess fabric as close to the top of the tray as possible. I cut out a piece of the fabric that would fit down inside the bottom of the tray and again used hot glue to secure it in place, paying close attention to the edges to make sure they were fully adhered to the tray. Next, I used some of the sisal rope and hot glued it around the inside bottom edge of the tray to cover up the seam where the bottom fabric meets the side fabric. I made sure to place the end of the rope at the back of the tray where the seam of the side fabric came together so that I could easily cover up that seam. Once I had the rope wrapped around the bottom of the tray, I added a line of hot glue along the seam on the side of the tray and placed the rope on top of the seam to cover it up, and then used hot glue to attach the rope along the top of the tray. When I got to the end of the rope, I cut it at an angle and hot glued it into place. I also went back with some hot glue to help blend the two ends of the rope together so that it had a more finished and seamless look. Then, to finish this project, I took some scissors and trimmed up the wild pieces of the sisal rope, and the tray was finished. I'm really happy with the way this tray turned out. I think it's really cute and different, and I just love the Western ranch feel of it. And last but not least, DIY number 6. For this final project, I used 9 of these 2x3 picture frames from Dollar Tree. I started by removing the stands from the back of all 9 frames using a pair of wire pliers. Once I had all the stands removed, I used E6000 and some hot glue to glue the frames together in sets of 3 so that I would end up with 3 sets of 3. When I was gluing these frames together, I made sure to place the hot glue in places where there was no E6000 because if these two glues happen to mix too much, they don't seem to hold as well. After I had all 3 sets glued together, I then took more E6000 and hot glue and glued each set to each other to create one large piece. Next, I took some of the sisal rope and, starting at the bottom of the frames, used hot glue to attach it all the way around the outside of the frame. A little tip: when going around the corners of the frames, the sisal rope is really stiff, so you have to bend it and hold it in place until the glue sets up so that there isn't any gaps between the frames and the rope on the corners. Once I got back around to the bottom of the frame, I cut the rope off at an angle and hot glued it in place and blended the two ends together. Next, I used some of this thicker jute that I had picked up on sale a couple years ago at Hobby Lobby. I cut a piece of the jute just long enough to fit vertically along the first seam of the frames and used a tiny dab of hot glue on the cut end so that it would not come unraveled. Then I used hot glue and attached it to the frames to cover up the seam. I then repeated this step to add another piece of the jute to cover up the other vertical seam. Next, I used more of the jute and hot glued it to the frames to cover up the 3 horizontal seams between the frames overlapping the 2 vertical jute pieces. Here is how the memo board looked once I had the jute glued into place. I used 12 of these thumbtacks from Dollar Tree and pushed them into a piece of scrap cardboard and painted them using Rust-Oleum metallic spray paint in the color Flat Soft Iron. Once the thumbtacks were completely dry, I pushed them down into the jute twine at the beginning and end of each line and then where the 2 pieces of jute crossed in the center of the memo board. Here is how it looked once I had all the thumbtacks in place. Then, to finish this quick little project, I took 2 of these picture hangers that I had laying around in my stash and used hot glue to temporarily hold them in place on the back of the memo board, and then used the screws that came with the hangers to permanently secure them in place. I'm really happy with how this memo board turned out. I think it fits in perfectly with our rustic home decor, and I can't wait to start using it. Here is one final look at all of today's farmhouse/ranch house inspired home decor pieces. But first, don't forget to enter the giveaway if you want to win one of these adorable Highland cow door hangers. I absolutely love how all these projects turned out, and best of all, they were fairly cheap and easy to make. Which one of these projects is your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. Usually I don't have a problem picking just one favorite, but I just can't pick this time. I want to thank each and every one of you for stopping by, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help me out here on YouTube, and if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, what are you waiting for? Click that button and stick around for a little while. I have tons of fun projects on the way. Also, please don't forget to go check out Amanda's video and channel, which is linked below. Y'all won't be disappointed. I'll see y'all next time.